Okay, we have time for questions. I see quite a lot of hands going up, so I'm going to ask that members be succinct with your questions and two clarifications for each of you. Ms. Cheryl Chan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've got two questions for Minister Desmond Lee. The first one is, with the inclusion of the first-timer, the parents and the married couples in the Family and Parenthood Priority Scheme, will this actually impact or affect those who are already today eligible for the PPS scheme itself? The second one is with the first-timer families, right? Because there are those who actually dispose of their private property or even a non-subsidized HDB flat. They, because of financial reasons, will have a need to go for a subsidized flat now. So what is the rationale for not, or sort of for only prioritizing the first-timers on those whom we think have never owned or actually sell any of the local residential property before?
Minister Desmond Lee.
I thank the GPC Chair for two questions. We are in a situation where demand is high for the various reasons that we've articulated during the housing motion. We are ramped up supply, but we hear from the various housing conversations under Forward Singapore that there are a group of Singaporeans who are undertaking their very first home ownership journey. Younger people who've just graduated, just started work, looking for their very first home. And while they are first-timers, people think that they should get extra help to get their very first home. Hence, we have scoped the group that will get this extra support, and they will be a subcategory within the first-timer group. And of the three measures that we are undertaking, the members asked about the Parenthood Priority Scheme, which is now renamed as the FPPS, Family and Parenthood Priority Scheme, because in addition to couples with children or expecting children, we are also putting in married couples who would be part of the first-timer parent and married couples group. And in view of this, we are expanding the proportion of flat supply that we set aside for this group, which would include the group formerly benefiting under the Parenthood Priority Scheme from 30 to 40%. And through that, we seek to strike a balance, ensuring that this group, the young married couples and parents, get extra support, while also ensuring that first-timers under the PPS continue also to benefit as first-timers. On your second question, why did we scope the first-timer parent and married couple subcategory to exclude those who had formerly owned or sold property? This is to enable us to achieve our aim of giving additional support to those who are buying their very first home. These would tend to be younger people who are just starting out. They may not have worked long enough to accumulate the resources or gain the incomes that older, more experienced Singaporeans have in getting more housing options. And so helping them get their first home allows us to, helping them in this way allows them to get their very first home. So those who had previously bought and sold properties would probably have more means. That's a broad proxy. But I hear the member that there may be extenuating circumstances, and I did say that HDB will look at families in extenuating circumstances. Be that as it may, they would still be considered first-timers, like everyone else in that category.
Ms. Sylvia Lim.
Madam, I have got clarification for Minister of State Faisal on the eligibility criteria for HDB rental housing. Earlier, in his speech, he mentioned that actually there's no household income ceiling as such, but the application will be assessed holistically. However, if you were to look at the HDB website today, there is still a mention of this 1,500 household income as most applicants fulfilling this criteria. So I have two questions relating to this. First, why is the 1.5 thousand figure still mentioned on the website? What's the purpose of it? And secondly, you know, in our experience, residents have been turned away from the scheme because their income exceeded that threshold. So could he share some information with us about the flexibility HDB has exercised? For example, how many households have they approved to go onto the public rental scheme that have exceeded this income ceiling, or some other data that for us to understand the flexibility aspect better?
MOS Dr. Faisal.
So all I can share with members, I thank member for the question. Like what I shared earlier, there is no income ceiling of 1,005. And in fact, we have approved cases where the proposed or the tenants, proposed tenants or the applicants have applied for, they are more than, they earn more than 1,005, right? So it's not one, but a fair bit of percentage. Let me just double check what's the percentage. I have the number earlier. It's about, for example, in 2022 alone, we approved 27% of the applications for those applicants having an income of more than 1,005. Yeah, so essentially, we look at it from a holistic point of view, right? The household size, and then the background, and then whether they have any housing options, and so forth. The amount that we share in the website that you refer to is actually, it states here, let me read. So your income will be used to assess your housing budget and option, I quote. We do not reject or accept applicants based purely on income, right? So applications are reviewed holistically, taking into account household size and individual circumstances. And that is what we have done so, right? So essentially, then we say that most of our applicants, right, have a household income below 1,005, right? If yours is above, you can still submit an application, and we will evaluate your eligibility accordingly, right? So our officers have done so. I work very closely with my colleagues in the rental section, and this is something that we have been helping fellow Singaporeans. Yeah.
Mr. Henry Quek.
Madam Chairperson, I have a supplementary question for SMS Semen. She announced that the MSO will pilot having dedicated team members to address a egregious case of neighborhood noise. There's existing efforts such as those by the grassroots and the Community Mediation Center. How does this proposed pilot enhance the current framework for community mediation and for disputes, and how does it complement the existing efforts by grassroots, MCCY, and MinLaw? Thank you.
SMS in N.
I thank Mr. Henry Quek for the question. We have every intention for this unit of dedicated personnel, when it is piloted, to work with the existing officers, for instance, in HDB, who have been handling such cases from time to time, and also grassroots to help to bring cases to resolution. The difference in this case would be that the dedicated personnel would be able to, we hope, for instance, be on site to corroborate reports that there have been noises at certain times, to verify whether that is in fact true, to, we hope, exercise some investigative powers, because today, I think quite a lot of what the grassroots, as well as what some government agencies' officers are able to do, they can't get very far if there is no consent given by the person who is suspected of making noise. And of course, today there's also no powers to ask the person to cease and desist from making noise pending satisfactory mediation or otherwise resolution of the case. So that, I think, would be the difference.
Mr. Chong Ki-hyung.
Thank you, Madam. MND and HDB is committed to building faster and building more. So I would like to ask the Minister, how does MND and HDB plan to sustain the ramp up in the supply of housing? Thank you.
Minister.
Thank the member for his clarification. As I've said, between 2021 to 2025, we plan to launch up to 100,000 BTO flats. That is a pipeline that requires a number of years of work beforehand in order to identify the land, in order to identify the things that need to be done, in order to make the land ready for that. And we'll continue with those efforts. It is a major endeavor. We have over 100 projects ongoing as we speak, 80,000 flats being built at this very moment. The ramp-up will continue. It will require resources. It will require the building capacity of our built environment sector. My colleague SMS Tan Kiat Hao had spoken earlier about the productivity and innovation journey that HDB had brought on board in order for us to undertake a building of this scale. You would also recognize that the flats that we're building today are much taller, more comprehensive, have more amenities and facilities than the flats of yesteryear. And at the scale that we are undertaking, it requires resources, it requires manpower, it requires land, but we are committed to persisting with this ramp up in order to meet the demand for housing by Singaporeans.
Mr. Louis Chua.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Just two related clarifications on the open market rental affordability. I think the first point is in relation to maybe Minister can share his considerations as to whether or not to, in deciding whether or not to grant this, because similar to the granting of the resale grants for singles, I think we're looking at quite a specific group of individuals rather than a broad-based grants being given, and it's really those who are eligible for the PPHS and PRS, but yet are unsuccessful in the application. And secondly, in the absence of which, should the open market kind of HDB rentals not kind of tame itself in the manner which Minister described once the people who are renting gets the keys to their BTO units, whether or not the government will consider intervening in the market just so that the rents don't get so out of hand. Thank you.
Minister, go ahead.
If I may just clarify, the members asking about his proposal to have a voucher to help Singaporeans needing to rent in the open market while waiting for flats. Yes. Madam Chairman, we study all suggestions and we keep all these ideas in mind. We keep an open mind. At this point in time, we are focused on ramping up the PPHS flats, helping those from more lower income households, $7,000 and below, with subsidized PPHS flats, and for those who have urgent housing needs with IRH, or interim rental housing flats as well. As I said earlier, with the large number of flats as well as private properties completing this year and over the next 2 years, we think that that may have some impact on the overall rental market, but we certainly keep an open mind and keep a close eye on the rental situation, and will be prepared to take necessary measures in order to support Singaporeans.
Ms. Mariam Jaafar.
Thank you. Just had clarification for the Minister and wanted to follow up on my question or suggestion whether people who, in order to unlock the resale market, whether those who are buying private property can be asked to sell their flats or to actually just be barred from renting it, from renting their HDB flat.
Minister Desmond Lee.
Madam Speaker, I think both Ms. Mariam Jaafar and Mr. Gerald Giam had asked similar questions whether government can prevent private property owners from holding on to their HDB flats. That means they bought HDB and they now bought private, or we stop them from renting out their flats. As I've said previously in response to some PQs, we are studying this issue. About half of the homeowners who own private properties while being HDB flat owners, half of that group stay in their private property and rent out their HDB flat. So it's about 1.3% of households. It's a small group, but we'll continue to study whether it is necessary and appropriate to prevent HDB homeowners who have bought private property from renting out their HDB flats.
Ms. Tin Pei Ling.
Thank you. I have two questions. One is that as we push for more flexible work arrangements, including work from home, I'm wondering whether the MND is looking at how we can enhance or redesign the living environment to better enable this, because one of the feedback is that sometimes it can be quite, there's not enough space or it's too noisy for that. Secondly, is that as the country continues to develop, and we have also looked at, we also, talk about trying to avoid, to preserve more green spaces for those who love the nature. What is the government's take on the more brownfield kind of sites? How are we going to develop or redevelop those while taking into consideration that some of these sites actually do have emotional attachments that people will have towards them, like homes, like flats? So we'd like to get Minister's position on this. Thank you.
Minister Desmond Lee.
Sorry, Madam. Maybe I'll deal with the member's first question on what HDB is doing post-COVID to learn from the experience of work from home in order to help Singaporeans, help businesses adopt flexible work arrangements. As I shared previously, we are looking at possibility of HDB housing design where we have more open plan flexibilities for the owner. Already we push the structural elements of each flat as far as possible to the outer perimeter of the flat. All right, so you try to avoid having structural beams and columns within the flat, such as to make it difficult for the homeowner to adjust the interior of the flat. So more dry walls, but all in push the structural elements to the outer perimeters of the flat. But going further, HDB is studying whether it would be useful to give different configurations for the same flat typology, so 5-room, 4-room, 3-room, but instead of having the typical standard room configurations, to allow some options, including providing options for people to configure a small workspace if necessary. But beyond that, as part of the long-term plan review, we are studying the lasting legacy of our COVID experience in terms of how Singaporeans and how our enterprises are adjusting and providing for hybrid work. And this will not just impact our design of the interior of the flats, but also causing us to think about the design of future housing estates, i.e. not just the flat, but the neighborhood, as well as future town centers and neighborhood centers. But already, as the member may have noticed in the media, we are experimenting with different things, even putting work modules that some companies are piloting at the bottom of the flats in the void decks with Wi-Fi and other facilities to see whether that is something that Singaporeans take to. Libraries as well as CCs have during COVID, and some continue well after COVID pandemic, to offer such spaces for Singaporeans to work away from office. And of course, there's the private sector co-working spaces that are found in different parts of Singapore, and we're studying with them the kinds of subscription to these kinds of models. So all in, a continued work in progress.
Minister Indrani Raja.
Madam Chairman, if I may just address the second clarification which Ms. Tin put forward. So she's identified something where we need to maintain a balance. We've got green spaces, there's brownfield sites, at the same time there's heritage. And in the early days where it was largely just greenfield, it was not an issue. You just expanded into the green spaces. But now we find that that's becoming increasingly scarce. And we have to try and make sure that we preserve green spaces, but at the same time, there's a need for development. So we've got to balance the two. But brownfield sites are actually quite exciting. They're exciting because it gives you an opportunity to redevelop and build on something which exists. And the big thing now for anybody who's in the infrastructure space is how do you take something which is an existing building and make it sustainable? And there's a lot of technologies and solutions that are going into this so that you actually turn something which is brown, green again. Then you may also have to tear down something which is existing and build afresh on it, redevelop it. And when you do that, that's when I think some of us, depending on the building, its location, and what it was associated with, then you may lose some of the heritage and you know, that cultural association. So we have to have a good balance, and we assess the buildings and the site, and if there is a heritage value, then we have to see whether you preserve the whole thing or whether you might have to redevelop it, but you preserve some parts of it. So for example, the old police academy, where we're going to have residential buildings, but we didn't want to sort of raise the thing completely. So we consulted, we got public feedback. We also spoke to the old police officers who had gone through the police academy, and there will be a part of it which will be retained there. And if you looked at the URA long-term plan review, there was a segment which was the Paya Lebar Air Base. You can see how this is still at the concept stage, but they tried very hard to make sure that, you know, parts of the runway would still be there, so as to preserve that association. So if I had to sum it up, I would say that our approach is really heart, home, and heritage.
Associate Professor James Lim.
Thanks, Chair. I have two questions. The first is for Minister Indrani. I understand that I spoke very quickly in the nature of a 30-second cut, not as fast as some other members are able to.
Please keep it succinct.
I had suggested that one alternative use of the MSCP beyond bicycle parking was temporary parking for delivery riders. And I think I'm not alone in experiencing delivery riders that are illegally parking along HDB service roads. So I'm wondering if the case-by-case consideration for MSCP ground floor repurposing will extend to such users. The second clarification is for SMS SIM-N, and I appreciate that there are many contributions to the cost of food, including raw ingredients as well as labor, but this should actually apply nationwide. And so whereas what I had compared in terms of the significant price differential was between mature and non-mature estates. So I reiterate my call to explore alternative auction mechanisms for new HDB coffee shops, and I'm wondering if that's something that they will consider.
Minister Indrani Raja.
I thank the member for his clarification, and I had implicitly addressed it, but maybe I gave my reply too quickly as well, so the member might have missed it. But for multi-storey car parks, we do have, where there's unutilized space, it is possible to have alternative uses, and the alternative uses would have to be assessed on a case-by-case basis. So I think not every multi-storey car park, for example, would need temporary parking for delivery riders, but if there is a need for it, and if the precinct assesses that this is something that they require, they're always free to put up the proposal to HDB.
SMS SIM-N.
Coffee shops that are in HDB estates are either owned by HDB and leased out, or they are sold coffee shops. I have explained that for the coffee shops that are leased out by HDB, our intention is to expand the budget meal regime to all of them, and I believe that will make an impact in terms of ensuring that there are affordable options in these coffee shops. As for the sold coffee shops, I have also explained just now that we have already decided to engage operators, those coffee shop chains that are operating out of these sold coffee shops, to explain to them MND's concerns about the availability of affordable food, and that is a dialogue that I believe will be a fruitful one. By and large, in terms of coffee shop pricing, it is not, I think, in the interest of operators to price themselves out of the reach of their consumers. We also understand that in different precincts, there may be some variations, but the important thing, and I believe the member also shares his concern, is that the resultant price to the consumers, there should be affordable options. And I believe that our approach would cover both the leased coffee shops, and also we'll start that conversation with the sold coffee shops.
Minister Indrani Raja, you had some clarification.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to add to my response to Associate Professor James Lim, which is that the suggestion of having space for delivery drivers is actually being piloted in some areas. I think this was reported back on 4th of November 2021, where it said that delivery drivers who are handling high-volume parcels were doing a pilot. It's called a pilot courier hub, and it's being rolled out at 2 housing board car parks in Punggol and in Punggol and Bangkok. So the designated lots provide the delivery personnel with space to sort and to handle the parcels. So there's these two ongoing pilots which we're studying as well.
Mr. Seah Yao Chen.
Thank you, Madam. I just have 2 questions for SMS Tan, and I promise they're not on chickens and cats. But first on the construction industry. So I'm glad to hear SMS Tan's update that HDB is playing a leading role in driving the demand for productive construction practices to help the industry transform. But the rest of the public sector is also a major developer of buildings and infrastructure, and there are very significant construction budgets. So I'd just like to ask, how might MND help to corral the whole of public service and galvanize the whole of public sector to drive the demand for productive construction practices in the industry? The second question on the built environment, in terms of the sustainable solutions that the built environment sector is going to generate in the years ahead, be it in construction, development, or maintenance, what might be MND's plans to help our companies to export these capabilities and generate economic value in the years to come for Singaporeans? Thank you.
SMS Tan.
Madam Chair, I thank the members for the 2 questions. On the first one, BCA is taking a lead to bring together the various government agencies who are very much in this infrastructure space. For example, the Land Transport Authority, LTA, JTC for industrial properties, etc. So they are known as the government procuring entities, or GPE for short. So BCA is taking a lead to bring them together. So we are all on the same page, collectively trying to raise productivity and transform the built environment sector. I just mentioned a few things that might be noteworthy for the member to think about. First, just starting at a contracting stage. At the start of any project, before you even get to build it, when you talk about contracting, I spoke about the collaborative contracting model earlier. And agencies, not just HDB, but the significant other GPEs are piloting the collaborative contracting approach. And I mentioned earlier that at least 10 public sector projects have piloted or will be piloting this approach. And this is a very important approach, which we believe that raises the level of productivity and a shared alignment of interest across all the project stakeholders towards common project goals, resolving issues early, tackling issues early, and hopefully to reduce cost and time delays as early as possible. So that's one. At the contracting stage, we are looking how to implement good practices like collaborative contracting. The second, also in support of Singapore's transition to a green economy under the greengov.sg program, In fact, actually under the MOF and MSc COS debates earlier, they have announced that the environmental sustainability considerations will be incorporated into public sector tenders and evaluation processes starting from 2024. And this will be piloted with construction tenders with a minimum estimated procurement value of $50 million and their associated consultancy tenders. And at the planning and design stage, I mentioned earlier how we are bringing together the various regulatory agencies. We have, in the past, many requirements from fire safety to LTA requirements to SLA requirements, HDB requirements, MParks requirements, various requirements that are imposed for any building project. So the BCA, through the CONET X project, is bringing together the various regulatory agencies to streamline these processes and really to make it easier and more efficient for building developers and their consultants to submit plans and get approvals early. And at the construction stage, GPs are required to commit to a 25 to 30% site productivity improvement over the 2010 levels by 2025 for their construction projects. So we are taking a lead, not just in terms of streamlining our regulatory approvals, but also setting high site productivity targets for our own workplaces. And I also spoke about various construction innovations like DFMA, PPVC, and many other techniques. These are all the techniques that many of our government agencies are piloting, using, adopting in their own projects. And I'd just like to specifically highlight one, which I think is going to be quite important, because it's not just about new builds. But I mentioned earlier that a lot of the cost of a total life cycle cost of a building is actually in its operations and maintenance phase. You can build a building for 3 years, 5 years, but you may have to operate and maintain the building for decades. And that is where we can make the biggest difference in terms of efficiency and sustainability targets. And the public sector is taking the lead in adopting design for maintainability and smart facilities management. Under the GreenGov.sg initiative, public sector buildings and developments undergoing A&A works must attain the Green Mark Platinum Super Low Energy Standard with a maintainability badge, which are only awarded to projects with demonstrating exemplary design for maintainability performance. It's significant, and public sector buildings above 5,000 square meters are also required to adopt Smart FM. So in gist, we are walking the talk, we are taking a lead, and we are setting high targets for ourselves. And the second question around that the member has about, through all this effort, investing in raising productivity, investing in innovation, does it lead to competitive advantages for our firms, for our workers, that can be exported and can be monetized, can be commercialized abroad? And the answer is that we certainly hope so. And this is one of the objectives that we have under the refreshed Built Environment ITM that we launched last year in September. And growing our innovation enterprise ecosystem in this space has always been part of our built environment effort. In recent years, we have in fact placed more emphasis on translating our research and innovation effort into economic outcomes for commercialization and export. And we're working very closely, and it's an ecosystem approach, institutes of higher learning, industry partners, research institutes, and importantly, government agencies as lead users. I'll just cite one example in the interest of time.
SMS, can I ask you to make it short, because
Okay.
there's still quite a few hands up.
I see, okay. I just want to cite one example in the interest of time. It's under the Built Environment Technology Alliance or BETA program. We have different companies like WarHub is one example, and Alliance Concrete, in collaboration with Singapore Institute of Technology, or SIT, have developed a manufacturing process for low carbon concrete. And this is one of the very few in the world that we are trying out. And if successful, this technology could help position companies like those participating in this project to better secure overseas construction projects, especially at a time when sustainability and green considerations are at the top of many buyers' minds around the world and our region. Thanks.
We are running out of clarification time, so I'm going to take four more questions, clarifications. On both sides, can I ask that answers also be kept succinct? So Mr. Gerald Giam, wait, let me just tell you all in the order. So You can put down your hands. I've seen everybody's hands. Mr. Gerald Giam, Ms. Nadia Samdin, Mr. Leong Man Wai, and we'll end with Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Chair. Just one question for MS Faisal and one for SMS Semen. For MS Faisal, can the community care apartment residents be allowed to opt out of this basic service package, which I understand costs about $164 plus GST per month? I'm worried that the cost of this package may be prohibitive for some retirees and may discourage them from applying for CCAs. Just to be clear, they could be allowed to opt in later when they need the services. And secondly, regarding the HDB units with no direct lift access, if lifts cannot be built on each floor, on their floors, would HDB consider installing stair lifts for those units? These are widely available and can be folded when not in use to ensure that there's a wide enough fire escape pathway. And I believe it will help many residents with mobility challenges to regain their independence. Thank you.
MOS Faisal, Dr. Faisal.
The answer is no. As you can see, we also provide other options available to the seniors, right? So they can choose whichever options they are comfortable with. So with regards to CCA, cannot opt out.
Minister.
Sorry, can I just check with Mr. Giam if I got the question correctly? He was asking whether we could explore alternative modes for the ease of going up and down stairs if the lift is not possible. Is that right?
Yes, specifically stair lifts.
Yes. I think the answer is that we would be prepared, we would be open to it, but a lot of it depends on feasibility. I know this because in my area at Tiong Bahru, I have a number of flats which fall into that category. But when you look at the stairs, some of them are actually curving stairs, and then the stairs are very steep. And I recall that many years ago I had actually asked M&D to look into this, which they did, and technically it wasn't feasible given the stair lifts at that time. So, you know, if there is a good technical solution, making sure that safety is not compromised, and that it actually does address the problem, I think we would be open to explore it, but we'd have to see what the product actually is.
Ms. Nadia Samdin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My first clarification is indeed firmly on wildlife. I really would appreciate more clarity on NPark's strategy and proactive approach to managing this more harmoniously in our city and nature vision, both for the safety of humans as well as animals. Is there a step plan or framework in place to preempt hotspots or de-escalate conflict? And can more thoughtful design of our estates, for example, those near waterways or set in nature, such as Tengah? I appreciate public education approach, but I think we really must go beyond campaigns, especially and only responding when there is a wildlife presence, because more animals will be pushed out into suboptimal territory with more development. Second, on specific precincts, there have been various challenges faced by Kampong Glam stakeholders in recent times, such as rising costs, and also ensuring the commercial viability of their businesses, as well as concerns whether traditional heritage in the area is being eroded by gentrification and newer developments that clash with our culture. Will the place plan address these sentiments and also explore solutions to balance and address these issues? Thank you.
SMS Tan.
Madam Chairman, I'll keep it brief. The short answer to the members' suggestions is yes, we certainly will explore all the different ways in which we can better manage the human-wildlife conflicts, including being more proactive about looking at the habitats of the wildlife and look at some of the specific areas where there are food sources and how we can make sure we can minimize the food source available to them, so that they can actually stop foraging at the human-inhabited areas. And I think one important component of all this is actually how we work very closely with the community And we have seen good successes where we have worked with community groups. Like, for example, I mentioned the Urban Wildlife Group and the Otters Working Group, where we proactively engage the residents ahead of time to, for example, prepare their facilities better to prevent otters from coming to their homes or minimize the risk or the threat that the otters feel when actually your young pups are actually in the habitat. So there are many ways we are doing so, and we will continue to do so, and we welcome suggestions as we do so. Thank you.
MOS Faisal.
Ma'am, to answer Ms. Nadia's SQ, through the place plan, we have been working very closely with the stakeholders there to identify projects as well as to look at strategies to ensure that the precinct continues to thrive. And what we also look at, we see how we can garner effective partnership and also harness the resources needed. And one thing about Kampong Glam is that there is this notion of cultural and historical value in that area. And what we have been doing is we've been working very closely with the businesses there, the investors, as well as the community to see how to find ways to protect Kampong Glam's historic areas' uniqueness. And while doing that, we are studying the case studies from around the world to see how some of these cities have been able to protect and continue to make their historical and heritage areas thrive. And also, what is key is that I'm very heartened that we got more than 1,600 people coming on board to share their views. And this in itself allow us to work very closely with the community. And in fact, even during COVID, we worked very closely with the Kampong Glam's community and the people who used to live there. So I'm quite happy with the support, but now is how we want to navigate together with the community and the stakeholders there to develop and deliver the plan.
Mr. Leong Man Wai.
Madam Chair, I have two questions for the Minister regarding the distortion of the current public housing system on our budget structure. First question, the MND's expenditure on public housing development has already ballooned from $2.9 billion in fiscal year 2021 to $7.2 billion in fiscal year 2023. And this is mainly due to the difference between the rising land cost that goes into the reserves and what is collected from the BTO buyers. Can I ask the Minister, does the MND plan to continue to fund this, even if this amount of expenditure continue to go up? Two, related to this is it fair for the Singapore taxpayer to pay higher taxes to help to fund this expenditure? Thank you.
Minister, please keep your answer succinct because we are really running close to guillotine time.
Thank you. I'll try my best, Madam. Yes, MND's expenditure has gone up, so have many ministries. A large part of it has got to do with our building ramp-up. We are building a lot more. We're building a lot more in areas where building is more complicated. For example, soil conditions, slopes. We are building taller buildings and more comprehensive estates. Construction costs have gone up by 30%. The land costs, of course, have gone up in this current environment. As DPM Lawrence Wong had said in budget debate, we are in that part of the property cycle where we're dealing with imbalance in supply and demand, resulting in greater demand as well as higher resale prices. We are committed to manage this supply-demand distortion in order to bring the property market to a more stable ground. We will make sure that we spend the resources in order to tackle this issue, in order to provide affordable, accessible housing for Singaporeans. And I think Singaporeans do certainly expect that, and that's a response to the second question.
Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Chair. Minister, I refer to the distinction between mature and non-mature BTO flats. I understand this distinction is currently under review and study. Can I confirm if this change in nomenclature is something that is being studied as part of the Forward Singapore exercise, or is it something for the longer term? I ask the question because obviously there would be much interest in the impact of the removal of this nomenclature on prices and subsidies. Thank you.
Minister Desmond Lee.
And the Leader of the Opposition, as part of Forward Singapore Housing Conversations, we have gotten views from Singaporeans as well as from experts about a range of issues pertaining to our public housing system. Some are of immediate concern, like the current situation. Some are longer-term considerations, such as whether the mature, non-mature estate classification remains relevant. And so certainly through the Forward Singapore exercise, we gather views and are studying the issue. But all in, MND continues to study how to enhance our public housing system.
Ms. Cheryl Chan, do you wish to withdraw your amendment?
Yes, Madam Chair. I would like to say, in the past 6 hours, we have actually deliberated and have a very robust discussion on many topics in this ministry. It's probably one of the ministries that covers and spans so much things, that does anything that builds into the sky, on land, below ground, on lakes and into the sea as well. So I want to thank the entire ministry, especially the two ministers, our two SMS, as well as MOS Faisal and the entire MND team, because I think the members have raised very valid issues, and also they've brought up their concerns, but they also brought very good suggestions, which I think we need to take it forward if we want to be able to build in a very sustainable way, and also to make sure that we integrate and build a stronger social compact moving forward. And Madam Chair, with that, I beg leave to withdraw my card.
Is the honourable member given leave to withdraw the amendment? I think leave of the majority is given. The amendment is withdrawn. The question is that the sum of $7,532,862,200 for Haiti stand part of the main estimates. As many as are of the opinion, say aye. To the contrary, say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. The question is that the sum of $9,379,351,000 for Haiti stand part of the development estimates. As many as are of the opinion, say aye. To the contrary, say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.